Good day, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Spot the Signal, Not the Noise. Our speaker today is Neha Chaurasia, Clinical Effectiveness Consultant at Sutter Santa Rosa Regional Hospital. At this time, all lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. We will have a question and answer period at the end of the presentation. Type your question using the prompt. They will be answered in the order they were received. Please identify the name of your organization at the beginning of your entry. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and will be available at the CIHQ YouTube library within a few days. Neha has more than a decade of experience supporting healthcare quality, accreditation, and regulatory surveys, including the Joint Commission, CMS, CIHQ, and CDPH inspections. Neha has guided the survey command centers, developed readiness programs, conducted and led mock surveys, and coached leaders to sustain compliance excellence. Currently serving as the Clinical Effectiveness Consultant 4 at Sutter Health's Sutter Santa Rosa Regional Hospital, leading strategic initiatives focused on regulatory readiness, quality improvement, patient safety, and high reliability. Neha's work includes advising ancillary departments on quality performance, serving as a reliability champion to strengthen safety culture, and leading hospital-wide initiatives that improved clinical outcomes. She is a fellow of the International Society for Quality in Healthcare, FISQ-UA, a certified professional in healthcare quality, CPHQ, and a certified change management practitioner, CCP. Beyond her professional role, she contributes globally through speaking, publishing, mentoring, and improving healthcare quality, access, and equity initiatives in underserved communities in India. Please join us in welcoming Ms. Neha Chaurasia. Neha, you have the floor.
Thank you, Michelle, for that beautiful introduction. Before we get started, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, depending on where you're joining from. As Michelle mentioned, my name is Neha Chaurasia, and today I'll be speaking about control charts, how they work, why they are important, and how to interpret them effectively or clearly. This video is specifically designed for new leaders in healthcare who may be struggling to understand or read a control chart. So if you've ever looked at a chart and felt overwhelmed by all the data points, wondering how to separate the signal from the noise, this session is for you. And just a quick disclaimer before we start. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. It does not endorse, promote, or recommend any specific product, service, or company. The content is focused on interpreting a chart and not creating one. Next slide, please. So in this video, we will cover how to know what a control chart or what a control chart is and when to use it ideally. Interpret the key components and patterns of a control chart, including central lines and control limits. We will know how to differentiate between common cause and special cause variation in healthcare performance data. We will also apply control charts to support, or we will also see how to apply control charts to support quality improvement, patient safety, and regulatory readiness initiatives in healthcare. So hopefully, by the end of the session, you will be able to look at a control chart with greater confidence and understand whether what you're seeing is simply routine variation or a signal that requires further investigation and action. So with that, let's get started. Now, before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to introduce myself. I know Michelle has done a wonderful job at introducing me, but my name is Neha, and I currently work as a clinical effectiveness consultant at Sutter Santa Rosa Regional Hospital. My professional journey in healthcare has been somewhat unique. I began my career as a dentist in India, where I practiced for 3 years before transitioning into healthcare leadership and quality improvement. I also hold a Master's of Science in Healthcare Management from California State University, East Bay, as well as an MBA in Healthcare Administration from India. I am a certified professional in healthcare quality, a Six Sigma Green Belt, and a ProSci Change Management practitioner. Now, over the years, I have had the opportunity to work extensively in healthcare quality, patient safety, and process improvement, and organizational change management as well. I'm passionate about helping healthcare organizations use data effectively to improve outcomes for our patients and to create more reliable systems of care. I'm also an active member at NACU, which is National Association for Healthcare Quality, and I serve as a volunteer with CAL, which is California Association for Healthcare Leaders, a chapter of American College of Healthcare Executives. And I'm also a member and volunteer at Women's Healthcare Executives. In addition, I serve as an advisory board member for Slum Soccer, which is an India-based organization dedicated to improving healthcare quality, access, and services for underprivileged kids in India. My work has, apart from contributing to my work, I also contribute to reviewing papers for national and international healthcare journals, and I've been fortunate to speak at healthcare administration and quality improvement forums before, just to create great awareness of patient safety, quality improvement, and healthcare leadership. And today, I'm excited to share some practical insights on control charts, one of the most powerful tools available for understanding performance, identifying meaningful change, and making better decisions using data. So let's begin. So before we jump into the control charts, which are also called as the statistical process control charts, I'd like to take a moment to highlight some of the other chart types that are commonly used in healthcare. So as healthcare leaders, we are constantly surrounded by data, whether we are reviewing quality metrics, patient safety indicators, operational performance, or patient experience scores, or even like financial measures. Data is often presented in a variety of chart formats, and understanding the strengths and limitations of each of these charts is essential for making informed decisions. So let's take a look at some of the most commonly used charts, which I've included a representation of here. So some of the commonly used charts are pie charts, bar graphs, column charts, line charts, area graphs, donut charts, tag bar charts, scatter graphs, or scatter plots. And last but not the least, what you see is the SPC, which is Statistical Process Control Chart. So many of these charts do a great job of displaying data and showing trends over time. However, while they can tell us what has happened, they don't always help us understand whether the changes we are seeing are meaningful or are they simply the result of normal variation. That's where SPC charts provide a unique advantage. So now let's jump right into what a SPC chart is. So the definition, or by definition, SPC chart which is also known as control chart, is a geographical tool that displays data over time with a central line and control limits to monitor process performance. It is used to distinguish between common cause variation and special cause variation, which is also called as natural variation or a non-random variation, enabling assessments of process stability and supporting data-driven improvement decisions. Now, before we move on, I would like to take a moment and introduce you to the anatomy of a SPC chart. The fluorescent blue line that you see in the center is the average. It is also called as the central line. If you have a lot of outliers, or if you generally have outliers, you would prefer to go for a median instead of an average. The +1 sigma sign, which is a dotted line above, and the -1 sigma sign, which is a dotted line below, show the first standard deviation from the central line. So the second dotted line, which is next to the +1 sigma and -1 sigma, is the +2 sigma and the -2 sigma, which denote the second standard deviation. And the third and final lines on the bottom, which is the +3 sigma and -3 sigma, denote the upper and the lower control line. So in case of a normal distribution, about 68% of values lie within plus and -1 sigma of the mean. About 95% of the values lie within plus or minus 2 sigma of the mean or average, and about 99.7% lie within the plus 3 sigma of a mean. This is in a normal distribution. Now, moving on, now we've seen what we call as a common cause and a special cause. But in order to really orient somebody who has never ever looked at a SPC chart or never ever looked at something that says or denotes a normal cause or a special cause, let's get into a real life example here. So this slide helps translate statistical concepts into a simple, relatable, real life example, something we all experience daily, which is like driving to work. So in this process, in the slide, the average commute time is 25 minutes with a standard deviation of 4 minutes, meaning most days the commute will fall within a predictable range of like 25 plus or minus 4 minutes. Now, not all variation is the same. We separate variation into two different key types. First is the common cause, and these are the routine expected variations that occur day to day. For example, if you are stuck in traffic or slight differences in traffic flow, catching or missing one traffic light, one small change in driving speed or small changes in driving speed, weather like light rain, the time you leave your house. So all these are things that would lead to a common cause variation, which is like little bit variation, which can be plus or minus 4 minutes of your regular drive time. Now let's look at what is a special cause in this case. So these are any unusual, unexpected events that disrupt the process. For example, if you're stuck in traffic because of traffic accident, you got pulled over, or a school bus stop or train crossing, you stopped at a school bus stop or behind a school bus stop or at a train crossing, or if there's road construction or detours happening, or even if you have car issues, that would lead to like special causes, which would lead to your increase in drive time from 4 minutes to even more. And that more can be even like 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, or it can even go more, depending on what you have come across. So that would actually be called a special cause variation. So a key takeaway here is understanding the difference between common and special causes is critical. If we react to every small variation, which is like common causes, we basically overreact and create instability in our processes. Instead, if we focus on identifying and addressing special causes which truly impact performance, that would make the difference. That would move the needle. So let's move on to the next slide. So this slide shows us exactly what we just discussed, the difference between a special cause and a common cause variation. Just like we used an example of a car or commute, we can use the same principle directly to healthcare processes, whether it's patient flow, medication errors, or length of stay, helping us distinguish between what a normal variation is and what the signals that require, and look at the signals that require action. Now, the common cause variation, I'd like to get a little deeper into it. So these are inherent expected variation present in a stable process. It is caused by routine factors within the systems, example, staffing patterns, workflow designs, and environment. It produces a predictable pattern over time. The data points remain within control limits without special signals. Improvement requires system-level changes and not individual fixes. So key takeaway from this slide or from this section of the slide is that this is the noise in the system. It cannot be reduced without redesigning the process. Whereas if we look at the special cause variation, which are the unexpected or process which needs a process change, these variations are due to specific identifiable factors outside the usual system. It represents a change or disruption in the process, and it appears as data points outside control limits or non-random patterns like shifts trends run, which we will see in the upcoming slides. It can be positive or negative, positive in terms of improvement and successful intervention, and negative in terms of errors, delays, failures, and so on. Now, anything that we see as a special cause variation would require investigation and action at the event level. So from our today's webinar, if you take away one thing, this is the signal. This is the signal of how you spot the signal and avoid the noise, or do not worry about the noise. So this is really the signal in our SPC chart. So now we'll see, why do we need to distinguish between common cause and special cause variation? Because variation is normal. Like, variation is supposed to happen in all the processes that we come across, especially in healthcare. So it is important to distinguish between common cause and special cause variation, because making the wrong interpretation can lead to wrong action. When we make mistake, or when we mistake common cause variation, the normal fluctuation that exists within a stable process, for a problem, we often end up overreacting to random variation. So this can result in unnecessary interventions, wasted effort, and frequent changes that do little to no performance improvement. On the other hand, if we fail to recognize special cause variation, we may overlook a genuine problem that requires attention, or miss an opportunity to learn from a meaningful improvement. Understanding the difference between both helps us choose the appropriate response. So if the variation is due to a common cause, the focus should be on improving or redesigning the system itself. If the variation is due to special cause, the focus should be on investigating the specific event, condition, or change that triggered the signal. Now, this distinction is one of the most powerful aspects of statistical process control. It enables healthcare leaders to interpret performance data more accurately, make informed decisions based on evidence rather than assumptions, and focus improvement efforts where they will have the greatest impact. Ultimately, distinguishing between common cause and special cause variation supports better performance interpretation, stronger data-driven decision-making, and more sustainable improvements over time. So now that we understand the special and common cause better, let's look at what qualifies as a special cause variation. I also named this webinar as Spot the Signal, Not the Noise, because I believe it very accurately describes how the first-time users can get overwhelmed by the amount of information that a control chart carries. So in order to make it easier to interpret a chart, we follow Nelson's 8 rules for detecting special cause variation and to better spot the signal and ignore the noise, and they are as follows. So looking at rule 1, it is described as 1 point is more than 3 standard deviations from the mean. As you can see in the picture, it is highlighted with a red halo to indicate that it is an astronomically high value. Rule 2, 9 or more points in a row are on the same side of the mean. As you can see from the picture, like all those 9 points lie above the mean. Rule 3, 6 or more points in a row are continually increasing or decreasing. As you can see, there's a trend here. So this third rule is also called as a trend. And in this case, we see that the data is moving up, or the metric is moving up. Now, if this is the case of a readmission, or if this denotes readmissions, that would be highly alarming for us, because this would show that our readmissions are going up. But if you are looking at hand hygiene compliance, and if this is the chart we are reviewing the data for, then it would show that our hand hygiene compliance has increased over time, which is an upward trend. So based on what you are observing, that is how you need to interpret your data. But this third rule definitely signifies a trend. Next slide, please. Now coming to the fourth rule, 14 or more points in a row alternate in direction increasing then decreasing. So this is also called as oscillation, or it's called as SAW. just because it is in a way that, it's alternating up and down. Rule 5, 2 or 3 out of 3 points in a row are more than 2 standard deviations from the mean in the same direction, as you can see from the chart shown. Rule number 6, 4 or 5 out of the 5 points in a row are more than 1 standard deviation from the mean in the same direction. So this is how it looks on the graph if you are to see it on the graph. Rule 7, 15 points in a row are all within 1 standard deviation of the mean on either side of the mean. So this generally shows that, that most of the points are closer to the mean. So this is how you would interpret Rule 7. Rule 8, 8 points in a row exist, but none within 1 standard deviation of the mean, and the points are in both directions from the mean. So it is basically like jumping up and down, but leaving the first standard deviation in the middle, as shown in the picture. Next slide, please. So now that we have seen all the 8 rules for interpreting a control chart, let's walk through a practical healthcare example to see how an SPC chart helps tell the story behind the data. In this scenario, a hospital team was monitoring 30-day readmission rates per 1,000 patients over a 25-month period. And this data is simply taken from the internet, so it does not relate to a specific hospital or facility. The x-axis here represents the month, while the y-axis represents the readmission rate. The dashed line indicates the historical average or the central line, and the upper and lower control limits represent the expected range of variation. So at first, the readmission rate shows a gradual increase. Then around month 18, if you see on the graph, we observe a point that peaks at or beyond the expected control limit. So this is our astronomically high value, which has moved above the upper control limit. So this triggers Rule 1 and signals a special cause variation, indicating that something unusual has occurred and warrants investigation. So a lot of times I get asked this question about, out of those 8 rules, when do we really need to pay our attention to the process? Does it have to qualify for 1 rule? Does it have to qualify for 2 rules? But I believe that even if you see 1 rule applicable to your control chart, you should take an action to see what is happening. Now in this chart, recognizing this signal that our data point has gone above the upper control limit, recognizing this signal, the organization seems to have implemented an intervention at month 18, including enhanced case management or maybe, better discharge processes. So in the months followed after that, the chart shows a sustained downward pattern from month 20 to almost to 25. And the data points remain consistently below the historical average, indicating a trend in performance. As we saw Rule 3, that applies here, because there's like multiple data points that have crossed the central line. So now, rather than relying on a single before and after comparison, this SPC chart allows us to see when the change occurred, whether it was statistically meaningful, and whether the improvement sustained over time. So this is really the power of statistical process control charts, as they help us distinguish between random fluctuations and true improvement, giving us greater confidence in our decisions and improvement efforts. So now we come to a quick interactive exercise that we'll all do together to help reinforce some of the concepts we've covered so far. So as you review the chart A and B, think about whether the variation you're seeing represents a common cause variation or does it represent a special cause variation. And we will take a minute to review and then discuss the answers with you. So starting a minute from now. And while everybody is thinking, I really want to thank you, Michelle, for driving my slides today. You've been immensely helpful. not just drawing my slides. You've just been, the rock star behind this webinar. So thank you for hosting me and thank you for doing all the hard work that you've done and for just supporting me in all the ways you can.
Of course, it's my pleasure. This is a wonderful presentation.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, so next, let's see what have you all answered. So if you have answered as A, as common cause variation, you're right, because we don't see any of those 8 rules in action. Whereas in picture B, if you see our one data point has moved above the upper central line, you see it as the mountain, the top of the mountain, if you see that area. So rule 1 has applied there. So that is actually called the astronomically high value, which you see around 417, 2024 if you zoom into chart B. So this is great. I feel like all of you are doing really well. You have a great understanding of what a special and a common cause variation is. And with that, now let's look at what are the key takeaways, common mistakes, and how leaders can use control charts better. So key takeaways, variation is normal. Whether it's a common cause, if it's a common cause variation is normal. Not every dip requires an action. So for example, if you're a new manager at a healthcare facility and if you're looking at a control chart, not everything would require an action. You can really look at these rules and decide what needs action. And if it's a special cause variation, that would need an action. And even if you see our previous chart and you would have seen that there was an astronomically high value, if you're a manager and if you're in that situation, you can really see and think, what did we do to reach there? If that was a metric that went up and it was a bad metric, or it was something that you did not want to go higher, you could really think about what you could have done as a facility to, or what differences have the facility made to lead the facility there. Or if it's a good improvement, for example, increase in compliance or something like that, you can really look at what has the department or the hospital done to lead us to an improved performance. So that is how you would really look at any of your values that are statistically important. Now also, focus on the systems, not isolated points, and improve your control chart for decision making. Now, some of the most common mistakes when interpreting a control chart is reacting to every single point. And this is, we see that's very common in healthcare world because, people are so interested in making improvements and improving performance for the hospitals that if there's one single point that moves in opposite direction, that does not mean that the process needs to be changed. That means that you need to observe the process and wait to see trends or see the trends over time to make a decision then. Also, people compare small samples, which is one of the mistakes, and confusing goals with control limits. So your goals can be your goals. Please do not confuse them with the control limits. If you're not sure about what you're going towards or what your goals are, you can always look up national databases or see what other hospitals are doing or other departments are doing to see what your goals can be for the specific metrics that you're measuring. And then how can healthcare leaders use control charts in healthcare? They can use it for performance improvement, regulatory readiness, board reporting, for improving organizations or moving them towards being high reliability organizations, and for maintaining or sustaining gains. Okay, now I believe we are ready to take some questions from our viewers today.
Right, thank you everyone. As a reminder, type your question using the question pane. Please identify the name of your organization at the beginning of your entry, as this gives our presenter insight into any special considerations that need to be addressed. And of course, please be sure your question is worded clearly. Okay, our first question comes from Kendall in Kentucky. When would you not use an SPC chart?
That is such a great question, Kendall. Thank you for asking me that question. So one situation where I would not use an SPC chart is when I'm interested in understanding a part to whole relationship rather than performance over time. So for example, if I wanted to understand the distribution of hospital-acquired infections by type, like CLABSI, COTI, C. diff, a pie chart or bar graph would be more appropriate because my goal is to see how each category contributes to whole. Or specifically, I would aim for a pie chart. SPC charts are specifically designed to analyze variation and detect meaningful change over time. So if the data is not time-based or if I'm simply comparing categories, proportions, or distributions at any given time or point in time, another chart would be a better choice than SPC. So the key question really to ask yourself is, am I trying to understand change over time or am I trying to compare categories? If it's the latter, an SPC chart is probably not the right tool.
Very good. Good question. I have another from Kelly in Nevada. How many data points should be needed for interpreting an SPC chart?
Thank you for that very important question, Kelly. So while there is no absolute minimum, I would say the general recommendation is to have at least 20 to 25 data points when creating an SPC chart. And this provides enough data to establish a reliable baseline, calculate the central line and control limits, and understand the natural variation within the process. Now, with too few data points, the control limits may not accurately reflect process performance, making it difficult to distinguish between common cause and special cause variation. So as a thumb rule, 20 to 25 data points are preferred to establish initial control limits. Additional data points improve the reliability of the control chart over time, and once a stable baseline is established, the chart can continue to be updated as new data becomes available. So remember, the goal of an SPC chart is not simply to display data, but to understand how a process behaves over time. The more data we have, the more confidence we can have in the conclusions we draw. I hope I answered your question, Kelly.
Yes, thank you. Robert in Florida wants to know, what do you, Neha, use control charts for?
Thank you for that great question, Robert. So I use control charts for measuring like readmissions over time for my facility or even observing room turnaround time for cleanings for EVS. And then I also look at infection rates to see how our infection rates are doing over time, even patient privacy events and so on. So I do use it for quite a few things in my role right now.
Yes, that's wonderful. From Kimberly out in California. This seems like a lot of rules. How do you remember all of them and never miss the signal?
That's a great question, Kimberly. And I often get asked this question. So the good news is that you don't necessarily have to memorize every SPC rule. In my work, I use QI macros within Microsoft Excel to create SPC charts. Again, not promoting Microsoft or Excel products or Microsoft Excel or Office products in any way, but one of the benefits of using a tool like that is that it automatically applies the SPC rules and highlights any signals that require attention. So the software identifies rule violations such as points outside the control limits, shifts, trends, or any special cause signals, making it much easier to interpret the chart accurately. It's actually marked in red if you see a control chart in QI macros in Excel, it's actually marked in red. So you could see it's a special cause by just looking at the chart. Now, that said, I still recommend understanding the purpose behind the rules. You don't need to memorize every detail, but you should know what the rules are trying to detect. And generally, they are trying to detect meaningful changes in process performance. So think of your software as a calculator or as your calculator. It performs the calculations for you. But still, you need to decide and understand what the rule means, and or you need to actually understand, not decide, but you need to understand what the results mean and what actions to take. So my advice is simple. Let the rule help identify the signals and focus your energy on interpreting the story behind the data, deciding what actions, if any, is needed. And you can always print the rules out and place it on your desk, or even refer to AI to ask what is happening with your SEC chart if you're not sure. But make sure your information is not sensitive or confidential. So hope that answers your question, Kimberly.
Yes, that's wonderful. All right, Neha, there are no more questions in the queue. If you have any additional questions regarding today's topic, please feel free to email me and I will get the question to Neha to share the ask. We hope to see you at the summit in Omaha or Council Bluffs, Iowa, if you will, in October. Any parting words, Neha?
Well, I just want to thank Center for Improvement in Healthcare Quality for calling me to speak about this very important topic today. And of course, I've thanked you, Michelle, already, but I feel like I can keep thanking you. You're just the best. So thank you for all you've done. Thank you for calling me, for all the coordination that we have done today. Like your help really, really, really means a lot, and you're awesome. So I truly appreciate the opportunity to share my knowledge, experiences, and passion for healthcare quality improvement with this audience. And I'm grateful for the platform you provide to bring healthcare professionals together, share best practices, and continue advancing the work we do to improve patient care and outcomes. So thank you, Michelle, and thank you, CIHQ.
You're welcome. Have a great day, everyone. All right, that's it.
Are we done?
We are, and I'm trying to figure out how to turn off the recording.